Hello, dear viewers. My name is Dr. John Mohmad Pandit, Assistant Professor at the English Department, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, Hyderabad. Today, I would like to deliberate on the most important topics, that is, process of communication and levels of communication. Before coming to the topic, we will see what communication is. Thereafter, we will take our main topic, that is process of communication and levels of communication. Now, what is this communication? The English word communication is derived from a Latin word communis or communicare, which means to transmit, to share, to impart, or to make known to all. Therefore, we can say that communication is a process in which a sender shares or transmits his ideas, thoughts, or for that matter, any message to the listener, so that both the sender and the receiver will reach at a mutual understanding. And this mutual understanding is important, as the word itself is suggestive, this communication. As I told you, it's derived from a Latin word communicare or communis, which means to share, to impart. Here the sender, he or she shares or imparts or transmits his thoughts, ideas, information, knowledge, etc. to the listener or to the receiver, so that both the sender and the receiver will reach to a mutual understanding. And when this mutual understanding occurs, we say that the cycle of communication process is complete. Now, we will see the different definitions of communication propounded by different scholars. Here's the first one. It's propounded by Merriam-Webster Dictionary. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, communication is a process by which the information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. If you look at the first part of the definition, it's here: communication is a process. Now, what is the process? Process means anything that follows certain norms, certain procedures. And when we say the communication is a process, it means that it follows certain order, certain procedures, certain norms. It doesn't happen in white or all of a sudden or haphazardly. It follows certain procedures and norms. That's why we call it process. And the next part is by which information is exchanged. Here the exchange of information takes place. And this exchange can take place between individuals or between groups. But the important point is that through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. That means the symbols or the signs adopted by the sender must be understood by the receiver. That means, or in other words, we can say that the sender must uh, utilize or use symbols or signs that are common between him and the receiver. Or to make it more simple, or to make it more lucid, we can say that the sender must use the signs or the symbols which can be easily understood by the receiver, so that he can understand those signs and symbols, he can decode those signs and symbols, and after decoding, he can give a suitable feedback. Now, again, what is communication by Merriam-Webster? Communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, and behavior. Here, the first important point is that communication is a process. And the second point is it is a process in which information is exchanged from sender to the receiver. And the next point is through common symbols or signs, or through signs and symbols which can be easily understood by the receiver. Now, the second definition, it's propounded by Peter Little. Peter Little defines communication as the process by which information is transmitted between individuals or organizations so that an understanding response results. Now, again, here in this definition, we see that communication it is a process. It's a process by which the information is transmitted between individuals or organizations. This transmission of information, it can take place between individuals or it can take place different organizations. And the ultimate end is that these individuals, they must reach to a mutual understanding. That's why here, so that understanding response results. Though there are certain things you need to understand. The first and the foremost is that the communication it's a process. It follows certain procedures, certain norm, and later on we will see that procedure. And the second point is that in this process, information is transmitted or transferred from one individual to another, or from one organization to another organization, so that there could be a mutual understanding between those individuals or between those organizations. Now, the next one is it's given by the Norma B. Singbach. I quote, communication is the transmission and the reception of ideas, feelings, and attitudes, both verbally and non-verbal. Now, again, it's a process where transmission takes place. And this transmission, it can be of information, it can be of ideas, feelings, thoughts, and this here, the transmission takes place between the sender and the receiver. That's why here both. It's the transmission at the same time reception. He's a person who transmits his ideas, thoughts, feelings. And there's again a receptor or the receiver who receives those ideas, thoughts, or feelings. And here the sender, He can use both verbal communication, that means he can use the spoken words or the written words. Not only spoken words and written words, he can uh, make use of non-verbal cues like gestures, postures, facial expressions, etc. Therefore, again, from this definition, we come to know that the communication here, the both transmission and reception takes place. That means in communication process, there is a sender who transmits his thoughts, ideas, feelings to the receiver. Receiver, which means a person who receives those thoughts, ideas, and feelings. And here the sender can make use of uh, words, verbal words, that means spoken or the written words, and at the same time, non-verbal cues like gestures, postures, facial expressions. And these non-verbal cues often complement our verbal communication. Now, from these definitions, we come to know that communication it's a process of transmitting, exchanging, or sharing information, ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions through what? Through speech. That means the spoken words, or signals, or behavior. That means non-verbal cues like kinesics, like haptics, any non-verbal cue for that matter, and the writing, that means the written words. To make it more simple, we can say that communication is a process of transmitting, sharing, or exchanging ideas, thoughts, feelings, emotions through speech, that means spoken words, signals, or behavior, that means through nonverbal cues, or writing, that means written words. Now, our main topic, that is communication process, or you can say process of communication. As I told you that the communication it's a process. It follows certain procedures. It follows certain rules, certain norms. It doesn't happen all of a sudden or in wide. In communication process, it starts, there are different steps of this communication process, and it starts with the sender, then we have encoding, then we have the message, then we have the channel or medium, then we have the receiver and decoding, and after decoding there's a feedback. Now we will take these points one by one. We will take these steps one by one, and we will see the different facets or the different dimensions of these steps. Our first one is the sender. The first and the foremost thing is that to initiate a communication process, we need a sender. Sender means a person who initiates this communication process. Or you can say that sender is a person who sends a message. Who sends a message. Therefore, for every communication process, there must be at least one sender. Sender who sends a message. Now, if you look at this different steps, and as I told you that to initiate any communication process, there need to be a one sender. Sender means a person who sends a message. But it is very prerequisite for every sender to have an adhere, which we call adhesion. That's why in certain books you will find adhesion as the first step in communication process. To initiate, as I told you that the sender is the initiator of this communication process. But the sender, it's prerequisite for the sender to have an adhere, which we call adhesion. It is the first step in the communication cycle. Again, here the sender means a person who sends a message. The second point is that it's encoding. What's this encoding? The sender, he encodes those his ideas, his thoughts by using different symbols, different signs, which in turn give rise to a message. Here, in encoding stage, the idea is converted into a message which can be transmitted. And while encoding, the sender must use symbols and signs which can be easily understood by the receiver. It's important to note, while encoding ideas, the sender must use symbols or signs that are common between him and the receiver, or those signs and symbols which can be easily understood by the listener, by the receiver, so that he can decode those signs and symbols, he can understand those signs and symbols, and after understanding, he can give a suitable feedback. And the next point is the channel or the medium. Here, the message is transmitted through proper channel or medium, and proper care should be taken while choosing this medium. Otherwise, there is the possibility of miscommunication. And this medium is important. Here, in this stage, external factors play a vital role. For example, I'm talking to my friend, or I'm communicating with my friend in a surrounding that is full of noise. And this noise can become a barrier between our communication process. Therefore, while choosing a medium, one should be very cautious about uh, about the tools which a person employs while communicating with the receiver. For example, if you are talking to a friend on the phone, you need to be very careful about whether the phone is working or not. That's why here the medium is very important, and medium can be anything. It can be your phone, it can be any email, it can be your, for example, computer, it can be your laptop, it can medium. Here we use different mediums to communicate with the receiver. Therefore, while choosing this medium, one need to be very careful whether the medium or whether the tool which a person employs while communicating with the others is working or not. So therefore, the medium is very important. And here in this stage, external factors play a very important role. For example, the noise, external surrounding. For example, if you are talking to your friend on a phone and there is a noise around you, naturally there will be a miscommunication between you and your friend. Therefore, here, while choosing a medium, one need to be very careful, one need to be very cautious. And then we have the next step, that is the receiver. And a receiver means a person who receives a message. After receiving the message, the receiver, he tries to decode that message. He tries to decipher. He tries to decipher those signs and symbols as sent by the sender. Therefore, decoding after, as I here, after receiving the message, the receiver has to understand the original idea. For this, receiver will decode the message. Decode the message means, decode means the decipher, to reveal, to make known. Here, what is the job of the receiver? After receiving the message, he tried to decipher, he tried to reveal, he tried to understand those signs and symbols sent by the sender so that he can give a suitable feedback. That's why I told you that the sender must use the signs and symbols which can be understood by the receiver so that he can give a suitable feedback. And the next stage is here feedback. Here, the receiver has to convey the message back to the sender that the message has been received. And in this stage, the receiver becomes the sender, and he need to go through all the above steps to send feedback. Now, again, when the sender is when the receiver is in a position to understand the signs and symbols, he can give a feedback. And again, here the receiver, while giving a feedback, he needs to go through all the above steps to send a feedback. Okay, to move further, before I would like to recapitulate this one. This the communication process. Here in the communication process, our first stage is the sender. Sender means a person who sends a message, and for in fact, the sender, he's the initiator of this communication process, and it is prerequisite for any sender to have an idea, which we call ideation. And the next stage is the encoding. Here, the sender, he encodes his ideas by using different signs and symbols. And after encoding his ideas by using different symbols and signs, it turns into a message. But one thing you need to understand, while encoding his ideas, the sender must use the signs and symbols which can be easily understood by the receiver, or which are common between the sender and the receiver. Then the next one is the message, that means the coded edges. And the next one is the channel or the medium. And while selecting a medium, one need to be very careful, because here this step, external factors play a vital role. For example, noise, or for example, the tools that a person uses for this communication process. And then the next stage is the receiver. A receiver means a person who receives a message. Here, the receiver, after receiving the message, he or the she tries to decode or the decipher or to reveal or make known the these decoded words. The coded words are decoded message, which is called a decoding. Here, the decoding means to decipher, to reveal the meaning of this coded message. And after decoding, after deciphering, after revealing the idea behind the message, the receiver gives a feedback. And while giving a feedback, the receiver has to go through all the above steps to send a feedback. And it was all about this process of communication. Now we have the second one, that is the levels of communication. We speak on different levels, and here we will see those different levels one by one. We have the first, interpersonal communication. Then the second one is interpersonal communication. And the third one is extrapersonal communication. And the fourth one is organizational communication. And the last one is mass communication. We will take these levels one by one. The first one is intrapersonal communication. Uh, Before we move further, uh, I would like to see the literal meaning of this word, intrapersonal. This word intrapersonal, it's a compound of two words, or you can say it's made up of a prefix intra and the main word personal. Intra means within, or intra means inside, or intra means interior. See the meaning of this word, intra. Intra means within, or inside, or interior. Therefore, we can say that intrapersonal communication is a communication that takes place within a person, or you can say within the mind of a person. That's why here it's the communication that occurs in one's own mind. It includes dreaming, thinking, remembering, deciding. And this intrapersonal communication, it's the biases of our feelings. It's the basis of our feelings, biases, or beliefs. For example, uh, when you are alone in your room and you are preparing for exam, there's no one in your room, you're all alone, and you talk to yourself and say, this year I must work very hard so as to get first position. Now here you are communicating with your own self. You are just motivating your own self for hard work. We can say that this is intrapersonal communication. As I told you, intra means within or inside. A communication that takes place within a person or inside his mind. There are different examples of intrapersonal communication. See the first one, what you want to do on the weekend. Uh, when you are thinking, or when you are talking to yourself that what you want to do on the weekend. When you think about someone or something, a self motivation is an example of this intrapersonal communication. Before moving to the second one, here I would like to tell you that this intra, you need to understand the meaning of this prefix intra. Intra means within or inside. Or when I say the within, it means the communication that takes place within a human being, or the communication that takes place inside the mind of a human being, inside the mind of a person. And you need to understand that this intrapersonal communication, it is the basis of our feelings, for example biases towards others, or our beliefs. Here the self motivation, or thinking, for example, where should I go for this picnic next weekend. It is an example of this intrapersonal communication. Now the second, here again we have this prefix interpersonal communication. You need to understand the meaning of this prefix, that is inter. Inter means between, inter means among, inter means to each other. Therefore, we can say that this interpersonal communication is a communication that takes place between two persons or that take place among different people. That's why it's the process of face to face interaction between the sender and the receiver, such as group meetings, interviews, discussions, etc. Therefore, in interpersonal communication, it is prerequisite to have a sender and a receiver. That's why we call it inter. Inter means between or among. It is a communication that takes place between a sender and the receiver. There are different examples of interpersonal community like group meetings or interviews or discussions or etc. Now look at some examples of interpersonal communication. When you are talking to your friend, it's an example of interpersonal communication because here we have a sender and a receiver, and the exchange of ideas takes place between the sender and the receiver. Or, for example, a teacher and a student discussing an assignment. Again, this is an example of interpersonal communication. Or a patient and a doctor discussing a treatment. It's again an example of interpersonal communication. Or a manager and an employee during an interview. Now, this is the most important one, interpersonal communication. As I told you that this prefix inter means between or among. It's a communication that takes place between two individuals or between a sender and the receiver, or it's a communication that takes place among different people or different organizations. Here, we need a sender and a receiver, and the sender can be an individual, it can be an organization. And this interpersonal communication, the sender, he or she adopts all those steps as we have read in communication process. That means encoding, message, medium, receiver, and decoding. Here all the steps takes place. And this interpersonal communication, here the sender, he can make use of verbal words, that means the spoken words or the written words, and besides spoken or written words, he can make use of non-verbal cues like gestures, like postures, like facial expressions, or the chronemics, or the distance, pace, paralanguage. He can employ everything to communicate his ideas, thoughts to the receiver. Now, the next one is the extra-personal communication. We need to understand the prefix extra. Extra means beyond. Extra means outside. And the personal here means the person or the human beings. It's the communication that takes place beyond human beings. Or you can say that it's a communication that takes place between human beings and other species. For example, your pet dog may bark and wag its tail when it sees you, or when you rub its back. And this sort of communication between you and your pet dog is called extra personal communication. That's why I told you extra means beyond or outside human beings. To make it more simple, we can say that extrapersonal communication is a communication that takes place between human beings and other species. It can be a communication between you and your pet dog, or you or your pet cat. For example, when you rub your pet dog, naturally it wags its tail, and this sort of communication between you and your pet dog can be termed as extrapersonal communication. Now we have the next one, that is the organizational communication. This type of communication occurs within and across organization. That means when we say the within and across, it's a type of communication that takes place within and across organization. Within means in a same organization, or across means between or among different organizations. There are different networks and different directions in which communication takes place. You need to understand this within and across. When I say the within means the same organization. When, for example, a communication takes place between you and your boss in a same organization, we call it within, and across means between your boss and the boss of different organizations. We call it across. Therefore, this type of communication occurs within and across organizations. And formal and informal communication, this here it can be both formal and informal communication, and upward or downward communication, or horizontal communication, etc. These are the different types of the organizational communication. For example, here we have upward communication. For that matter, what is this upward communication? For example, when a subordinate communicates to his or her boss, this type of communication is called upward communication. Or for that matter, we have another downward communication. For example, when a boss communicates to his or her subordinate, this type of communication is called a downward communication. And there are different types of procedures. For example, we have upward, downward communication, horizontal communication, or grapevine communication, etc. And then we have the mass communication. And you know the word mass, it is suggestive in itself. For example, mass means the whole people. When the sender, for example, when the sender has to reach out to a large mass of people, this type of communication is used. And it's the electronic or print transmission of message to the general public. Here, the sender, he can make use of different gadgets like electronic or print medium in order to send his or her message to the general public. It includes, for example, radio, television, film, newspaper, etc. For example, mass communication, for example, CM of a state, uh, he talks to his audience, he talks to his people through television or on a stage, on a dais. We can say that this type of communication between the CM and his subject, we call it it's a mass communication. That's why you need to look at this when the sender has to reach out to a large mass of people. This type of communication is chosen. It was all about process of communication and the levels of communication. We will meet again with the next topic. Till then, goodbye.
Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.